You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today in our mini show we're looking at some buy low players. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Let us start by looking at the first guy on this list. That's a great place to start, and that is Big Steve Adams of the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's been dealing with some injuries, but over the last 5 games, he is well down the rankings. So far down, in fact, you need to scroll past number 300 to find Steven Adams at number 322. He's only played 16 minutes a night. He's had ankle problems, but that's not all. He's shooting only 35% from the field. He's grabbing 3 rebounds per game in 16 minutes a night, scoring 3 points. It is as low of an area as you will find Adams. Now, he is still only the 113th ranked player over the course of the season because his start of the season was absolutely shitful. But he improved from there. He had a little run as a top 40 guy for a couple of weeks, and he sort of started to hover around that 70 to 100 type of range. The free throw percentage, it's an absolute killer. But this sort of recent production, and even if we stretch it out to the last month of games, he's outside the top 140 because that 60 plus field goal percentage has fallen way off over that time. The block numbers, which were up at the beginning of the season, they've fallen back off as well. I think there is some significant room for Adams to improve here, but it's not good at the moment. But that means you can get him for nothing. You can get him for the worst player on your roster, perhaps. Maybe he's on the free agent waiver wire. Maybe things aren't just going to go well for him because Nerlens Noel is playing so well and we're going to get Adams limited 28, 29 minutes, which I think is a distinct possibility. But I also feel pretty confident in saying that he'll be better than what he has been of late. I believe I had Jamal Murray on this list last week, but he is still dealing with that ankle injury, so there is still a bit of a buy low window in that time. He's the 52nd ranked player over the course of the season. That's a little bit high. It was fueled by an insane run of a lot of steals from Jamal. We know what he is. He's a points guy who gets some threes, 4 assists. They're really not much in that area, but he can still be obviously really useful. But while someone is injured, and if people are worried about it, as they should have those concerns, you can get them at maybe a round, 2 rounds type of a discount, and that's what you should be looking at with the blue arrow there. Kelly Oubre is on my list. Not only is he a sexiest player in the NBA, but he's also a guy that's struggling a little bit at the moment. 179th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. It's not the minutes because he's playing 36 of those a game. It's the fact that he can't shoot 37% from the field. And this is something that has plagued Oubre through his career, and he turned it around this season. He was shooting unbelievable from 3. I did mention it as something I don't think it's going to be able to stick. Well, in fact, over the last 5 games, he's hitting 16% of his threes. This is what happens with guys who put up 50, 45% from 3, and it's not going to stick when you've been a 31% guy, 32% guy for most of your career. It does fall off in a pretty aggressive way the other direction. But that's then when you go into the buy low mode. He's still averaging 17 and 7. He's still giving you 1.2 blocks. The steal numbers are down. The field goal percentage is down. The 3-pointers are down. The scoring is down. Oubre is close to a top 50. Well, he's a top 50 player this season. He can get back to that. But as the 179th guy at the moment, there's a little bit of wiggle room to try and get that value back in a deal. It's never going to happen for everyone. We all know that. You can approach every Kelly Oubre manager in your leagues that you're in, every one of you, and not majority of them won't sell at a cheap price, but some of them will. And for those some that do, for some that panic, for some bad managers, then that's where you get that value in a deal. The next bloke.
Percentages.
Yes, Kristaps Porzingis of the Dallas Mavericks. It's been a little bit rocky since returning from his knee injury. Just 26 minutes a game, only 15 points, shooting 37% from the field, 33% from 3. His rebound rate is up this season. His block rate recently has been a little bit down. He's just working himself back from that sore knee. So I do think that I do know there is significant upside. Now, Porzingis has been disappointing this season. The 61st ranked player. This is a bloke that was a top 20 type of guy in his last season with the Knicks. He's not getting back to that level. The usage just isn't quite there. But we saw when Doncic was out, Porzingis stepped it up and put up really, really good numbers. So he is taking a rightful back seat to Doncic on this team, but still, as the 94th ranked player over the course of the last 2 weeks, you can see that scope as a bit of a buy low. I don't really think the Dwight Powell injury has any positive impact on Porzingis. He was going to get his minutes. He was going to protect the rim. He was going to get his shots. He was going to do all that stuff regardless. But the fact that he's struggling at the moment, people worry about the knee injury, there is a little bit of a discount to have there, and I wouldn't be shocked if Porzingis finished out the stretch as a top 50 guy from here on out. De'Aaron Foxy Fox of the Sacramento Kings. You'd be, I guess, a little bit surprised to know that he's the 90th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. He's 53rd over the course of the season. Absolutely a disappointment based on what we thought he could do. Why is he so low when he's averaging 21 points a game, Josh? Well, he's shooting 57% from the line on 7 attempts, and people overreact to things. Oh, he's killing my free throws, and that is right. Does he kill them this badly most of the time? Of course he doesn't. So, again, it's about looking at what fits your team, not going by overall rankings. And I say this as I reference overall rankings because they're important to know, what other people think. It's not that important. Yeah, Fox is like a 71, 72% free throw guy, which is below average. You should already be aware of that. So you know that when you've got him. But you want his points. You want his assists. You want his steals. You want what he's doing. He's also can't hit threes at the moment for shit, hitting 16, 17% of them at just 0.5 per game. That's absolutely nothing. So that can improve. So there are 2 clear indicators there of things that he can get better at that are going to jump him back up and improve that overall production. And when your percentages are down, they're multi-cat influences. Field goal percentage influences points. It influences field goal percentage. It influences threes. Free throw percentage influences free throw percentage and also scoring. No other category has that multiple impact unless you're playing in a league with total rebounds and offensive rebounds. And then offensive rebounds impact both of those. Unless you're playing in a league with assists, turnovers, and assist to turnover ratio, then they all impact each other. But in a general standard format, the percentages are your multi-cat influences, impactors. I don't know what the right word is, but you know what I mean. Another point guard is ravishing Rick Rubio. Rubio is struggling a little bit at the moment. He is allegedly dealing with an ankle injury. He is shooting 40% from the field, which is not that far off what Rick's been doing, but only 64% from the line, only 12 points per game. He's still giving us 1.8 steals. There's still 6.5 assists, which could be due to come up. He's the 59th ranked player this season and he's 84th over the last couple of weeks. So that is mainly because of that negative on his free throw percentage, having an overall impact on his scoring numbers. He's been great this year. It's a little bit of a down trend at the moment. He's a little bit worrisome. And look, when I put these guys in, it's not just based on rankings. It's based on, I get feedback from people. They post on Basketball Monster player comments. They post on my Instagram. They post on my Twitter. They post on my Facebook, they comment in my YouTube comments, and that's all of you guys as well who are out here listening. But I see the things. Should we be worried about Rubio? What's going on with Rubio? What are we doing with Rubio? And if I see that name pop up a few times, it means that people are panicking. So I'm here to reassure them, don't panic, but I'm also here to reassure you that those people might exist in your leagues that don't listen to this podcast, so go and get him at a cheaper price. Because if it's one person who says, should I be worried about James Harden and sell him for McCall Bridges, I'll say, come on, mate, what are you doing? But if someone and multiple people say, hey, what's going on with Rubio? Rubes, what's going on? Then that's a bit of a trend that's happening, and it is worth mentioning because that sentiment will persist through other type of leagues, in leagues where you may be able to take advantage of that. Speaking of bloke that's getting some hashtag social traction, that is Brandon Ingram, and the return of Zion Williamson has not been pretty for Ingram, who's the 76th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. 3 games with Zion, 3 games without. He's the 20th ranked guy over the season, and we've been talking all along, or I've been talking this season, about how I didn't think that the shooting could persist because he has shown us for 3 years that he can't be this shooter. He can't take this volume of shots. He can't hit the threes at this percentage. He can't hit the free throws at this percentage. So what's going on here at the moment? He's a 47% guy over the course of the season. In the 3 games since Zion returned, 30%. Now, we can sit here and agree that maybe he's not going to be a 40% three-point shooter. I think we can all sit here and agree he's not going to be a 29% two-point shooter, which he has been since Zion returned. So there's a happy middle ground. Now, some of it is not just Zion, because over the last month, he's down to 42% from the field. But this is also a guy that was at 50% last year with the Lakers, 47% last year with the Lakers. He just didn't take any threes and he couldn't hit free throws. So we're in a slump that is marginally Zion related. I think they'll figure it out. We're also seeing a usage drop, a 2 percentage point usage drop during that time as well, which is obviously having some level of concern. The assist numbers have dropped as well. The rebound numbers have absolutely disappeared, and all that is reasonable to think could continue for Ingram. But that shooting, or those shooting numbers, I think we should have a decent level of confidence that there's going to be a pretty large bounce back from 29% from 2. And and he won't average under 3 rebounds, which he's also been doing. But again, that is going to be impacted by Williamson. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And it has been trending down anyway. But he's still at a bit of a buy low. So it just all depends. The Ingram guy will panic. How much they panic? Do you pay top 20 price? Of course not. Do you pay top 30? No. Do you pay top 40? Probably not. Do you pay top 60? Yes. So that's about that difference. Is it truly a buy low if the guy's 20th and you get him for the 35th best player? No, it's not. Not in this case. When the drop-off is real in some areas. But then there are others where you look at, well, that's got nothing to do with it. Or maybe it does, but it won't stick at that level. And then the bounce back will come and he'll start to normalize. Let's look at Myles Turner from the Indiana Pacers. Turner has been shit this season. Only 25 minutes a game over the last 6 of them. 7 points, 5 rebounds. And of course, the thing that keeps his value up is his blocks. And they're not there. 1.3 per game. And throw that in that he's shooting 38% from the field and 69% from the line.
Giggity!
And it's just a rough run of things. 131st ranked player over those last 2 weeks for Myles Turner. But he is a better free throw shooter than that. It's a multi-category influencer. We know this. He's at 74 on the season. He was at 74 last year, 78 the year before that. So anything under 70, you can expect that to come back. Now, the blocks have not been at that elite level of last season. Again, something that I talked ad nauseum about with Myles Turner, because if he didn't block those shots, he was going to be considered a huge overdraft guy, and that is exactly what's happened. He's down to 1.9 on the season, but that's gone even further down to 1.3, which would be the lowest number of his career since his rookie season, that 1.3. So I think we can look at that as coming up, as we can look at the 38% from the field. This is a bloke that was at 49 and 48 each of the last 2 years. Yes, it's been bad this season, shooting just 54% on his 2s and 34% on his 3s. That's the big killer. The fact that over the last 14 games, or in fact over the last 30 games, he's under 30% from 3. So this is a guy who was 39 last year. That can all come back up. So while we can complain about Turner, and you can say, how can someone 7 foot not grab any rebounds? And you can have that concern. We know that's what he is. We know he's a bad rebounder. We know his value is tied to shots, blocking, but we also don't expect him to be this bad at shooting. And when that comes back up, a lot of that other stuff will come back up, and you can probably get him for the worst player in your team with how he's performing at the moment, realistically, because people are not happy. The last guy I want to talk about is Eric Bledsoe of the Milwaukee Bucks. He is 168th over the last 2 weeks. 11, 4, and 4. Nothing great there. But this is a guy whose steal numbers and field goal percentage numbers vary a lot. And when they are down low and they're at 41% from the field and 0.6 steals, his value tumbles. And then he goes and gets 2 steals a game and shoots 50%, and he becomes a top 30 player. That is what happens. He is the 69th ranked player.
Giggity!
Over the course of the season, you should view him as a guy between 50 and 70. That's sort of a range of a player. And at the moment, he's not in the top 150. So you can try and package a couple of crud munchers at the bottom of your bench, add them together, and try and get a Bledsoe. He is in a bit of a slump. He did play well in that game in Paris, so that was a big turning point, hopefully. But this is a guy who is a quick and easy target of criticism in fantasy, and that makes him a guy that is imminently gettable. That will do it for me today, guys. Don't forget, subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.